What would you do if you heard a woman sobbing near the river at midnight, and when you called out, no one was there? Tonight on I Can't Move, we explore La Llorona, the weeping woman whose cries have haunted generations. I'm Jorge,
And I'm James.
and this is the I Can't Move podcast, where we explore La Llorona, the weeping woman.
La Llorona. So is that an I after the L on the
It's
second?
two L's.
Two L's.
Yeah,
So La Llorona.
yeah. It's
All right.
so if you see two L's,
Mhm.
that is kind of difficult to sort of make out, but just because one's capitalized. But yeah, with two L's, the sound is like a yeah. So whenever you see a singular L, it is the la,
La
the la sound.
La Llorona.
Yeah, but if you
Got it.
see,
I'll try not to butcher it.
that's all right. That is totally all right. All right. So I'm definitely happy to be here, and I'm really excited to get into this because this is a story that I actually heard about whenever I was a kid, but it wasn't because of my family, it was because of the kids I went to school with. And
Really?
oh yeah. So whenever I was going to school, I grew up in Texas, and
Oh.
the area that I lived in was predominantly, I would say there was more Black and Hispanic kids. And so definitely in the area that I was in, it was, I would say probably even more Hispanic. Um, and maybe primarily Mexican because a lot of these kids, it seemed, had a lot of memories, you know, spending a little bit of time in Mexico. So, but yeah, they would. I remember this one girl like telling me about La Llorona and me thinking like it was like the creepiest thing ever. So, but then as the years went on, I think her story has probably gained a little more traction. Um, but every culture has maybe a different interpretation, but it ultimately ends up leading up to the same thing. So,
Yeah, because I can say where I grew up and went to school in the middle of a cornfield. I had never heard of La Llorona. And
mhm,
I've throughout my adult life I've heard of it. And I know the phrase the weeping woman. I've heard of that,
mhm,
but I never really looked into it until now by doing this topic. So it's pretty interesting.
mhm.
Very heavy into Mexican folklore.
Yeah. Yeah, I will say like overall it is really creepy, Like even just like hearing the story, I remember
No, no way, dude.
I remember this girl telling me like, oh, um there've been stories like because I'm usually whenever you hear folklore or folk tales like this, it's always I know somebody who knew somebody.
Yeah, of course.
It rarely is ever like a personal experience that they have, but
Mm.
like it was oh well, a family member of mine had heard crying in the corner of their room. And even if that's BS, at the same time, like that is creepy. Like if you hear that as a 5-year old, 6-year old kid, you're gonna be,
If there
well,
are
what?
no young children nearby and you hear crying, or yeah, it would be creepy, definitely.
Yeah. So, um, I do have a little bit of history for her. So if you want to get into that,
Yeah, the legend.
yeah, the legend
Yes,
of La Llorona.
La Llorona.
So La Llorona is a central figure in Latin American folklore, and she's got stories that trace as far back as like the mid
Aztecs.
1500s.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, that's so obviously like her story, or at least some interpretations of the story, have been existing for a long time.
Mhm.
Um, so she's often described as a restless spirit that is condemned to wander rivers and lakes, forever mourning the children she lost to the water. And in many, like we said, like there's many different interpretations of the story, but usually the story begins with a woman by the name of Maria. She was admired for her beauty. She resolved to marry only one man whose looks would match her own standards, and she eventually wed a young ranchero, as the stories I've read seem to
A very
gather.
handsome, established man.
Yeah, the stories
Wealthy.
establish that she was with a young ranchero, and then they ended up having two children. But over time, the man's affection fades, and sometimes this faded affection is portrayed as infidelity, or sometimes as like a cold neglect.
Hmm.
And her jealousy and despair just grows. So, and the interpretations that I've heard is that he kind of veers his attention away from her and more towards her kids. Like he just likes spending more time with his children rather than he likes spending time with her. So then she starts becoming jealous over the kids. Or yeah, the infidelities, cheating on her with another woman. She finds out about it and he doesn't really care. So it's just interesting because the story sort of changes a little bit. Like the details kind of change um throughout. In some retellings, so she drowns her children in a fit of rage or sorrow before ending her own life. And then, of course, denying peace in the afterlife, she was cursed to search endlessly for the souls along the water's edge, her cries chilling those who hear them at night. Other traditions place the story in colonial Mexico, where Maria bore the children of a Spanish nobleman. When he refused to make her his wife, she killed her children in anguish. In other circles, I've also heard that she had also murdered her children when the man she loved didn't want to father the children she already had. And each variation
Hmm.
emphasizes her eternal punishment, to roam between worlds, searching and weeping for the children she can never reclaim.
Yeah, the
Very
most
interesting folklore.
yeah, the most common one that I saw was what you talked about, and that she had two children with this man she met, and then he had some kind of occupation where he traveled, and he would come and go, and eventually, whether he got decided to start a second family or whatever, she saw him with another woman, maybe not, with some children, and yeah, like you said, in a fit of rage, round her two children she already had with him. I think it was one of those attitudes of, if I can't have them, no one can.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then she drowns him, and then she was cursed by God, assuming, to wander the earth near bodies of water and look for other children that she thinks are hers. So, and I wouldn't, I don't have my notes here. What she cries out in Spanish that says "my children."
Oh, ay mis hijos.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's typically what it is. And like she'll yell that out, or you'll just hear a cry. And the funny thing about that is that like, I have heard stories, like not like I don't mean like campfire stories, but more like hunting stories where people like kids that I grew up with that went, hunting with their dads and things like that,
Mm-hmm.
they would often say that like and these are not like Hispanic, these were not the Hispanic kids that I grew up with, like um but I did hear that like whenever this kid and his dad went hunting, like this was a kid that I did go to school with, and like they were in the middle of the woods and they just heard what sounded like crying.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny thing is that there are animals out there that whenever they do like, yelp or have like this call, it sounds like a woman crying. So it very much could have been one of those situations, but still unsettling
So
at the same time.
I have two personal experiences, and they do have a logical explanation, but I'm not saying that's a logical explanation for every experience someone has. But there was a time me and my buddy were walking through the woods, and we started to hear a baby crying. We thought, no way. It wasn't a weird day or anything, but we heard a baby crying, and we're like, you have the internal panic, like, why is there a baby crying in the middle of the woods? And then we find the source of the sound. We look up, and it's a tree. The two trees are rubbing together, and somehow it sounds like a baby crying. Dude, look it up. And
Interesting.
I've heard after the fact, I heard somebody talk about that branches or trees can rub together, and it does. It sounds like a baby crying or crying. And then the other experience I had, which had a logical explanation, I was just with my dog Henry at the time. We were walking around in those same woods, and he ran off for a second, and I yelled, I was like, Henry. And then a second later, I heard Henry, and I snapped around because I thought there was someone behind me. And I mean, my heart just dropped to my stomach. And I looked, and I still didn't see my dog. And then I heard it again, like Henry. And I looked up, and there was a mockingbird literally like in the tree right above me.
Wait, what?
Yeah, I kid you not. It was a bird. It was a mockingbird. It heard
I
me
mean,
yell Henry, and then it just copied me. Or
wait, mockingbirds can. So I figured. I mean, I knew that
this one did.
they.
I swear, dude. I looked right up, and it was like Henry, and I was like,
Oh,
oh my word.
dude, I
Yeah,
knew
it
that they
scared the
could like
crap out of
imitate
me.
like maybe other animals or something like that, but or like other birds or something. But like, I did not
Yeah,
ever think that
uh,
they could imitate humans.
yeah. I swear, dude. I looked right at the bird, and I thought, wow. But anyways, those are two examples of when you hear crying in the woods or something. There was a logical explanation, but
Yeah.
that's not the reason every single time.
No, and I'm actually looking at this right now. Just did a quick Google search, and foxes, bobcats, and mountain lions can make sounds that are often described as resembling a woman that's crying or
Yes.
screaming.
Like a bobcat screaming sounds like a woman in being murdered. Yeah, it's really creepy.
Oh, geez.
And we've got bobcats and coyotes
Yeah. Um, I think. I mean, I've seen plenty of coyotes around there. Um,
around those parts.
yeah, around those parts. I mean, and here it's saying that it could be to like mating calls being one of them.
Yeah.
Um, which I think I don't know. There's something about that that's just kind of unsettling. Like
Yeah, because
a
it's
mating call sounds like a woman crying.
yeah, or screaming. You're like, no.
I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense because it kind of gives me like that shoulder to cry on sort of sort of vibe.
You might have noted her description of what she looks like.
Yes, go ahead and tell the audience the description.
So she is commonly seen wearing a white dress, like a wedding dress,
Hmm.
long black hair, pale, ghostly figure, and kind of from the imagery I found, really disgusting and decayed. Like she needs some vitamin D. Didn't look too good.
Yeah.
Really gross. Just that same, the ring, whatever
Yes.
type stuff, like gross, dirty
Yes.
fingernails, the whole shebang.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw this, but in other stories, they apparently like other stories also suggest that she wears a cape or a veil, which are described as being
Yeah,
black or white
a
as
veil.
well,
Yeah, yeah,
which that's gross.
yeah. I'd still want to punch her in the face.
Yeah, and it's funny because the ring is the first thing that popped up into my head too.
Yeah,
Uh,
turn.
that and
She's crawling out the TV. Just turn it off.
yeah, just turn the TV off.
Or
It's easy.
I don't. Does anybody watch VHS anymore? I mean,
The ring and the grudge
yeah,
pop into my head.
ultra yuck.
Yeah. I don't know about man, I don't know about you, but that one, I would say The Grudge is probably the one thing that like creeps me the heck out.
Yeah, I have to say, side note. So we both, I saw The Ring. The Ring came out when I was in high school. And to this day, I've had three reoccurring nightmares that are all the same involving that. Yeah.
The
Um,
the Ring?
The Ring. Yeah.
Oh,
It always just really, it wasn't funny. It just really terrified me. But yeah, the black hair, droopy thing, the dead, I don't know. But anyways, yes, La Llorona is supposed to look a lot like that.
ew.
Yeah.
Yeah. And typically, yeah, any picture that I've seen, any picture I've seen, it's yeah, it's that long hair covering the face. I
Mhm.
don't think I've seen any pictures of her face exposed. From what I've seen, it's just
Like when
always
she was
like
Maria or when she's
no, just of like the ghostly
okay.
stuff. Cause like, I mean,
Yeah, she just looks how you think she would.
going just into the other variations, the like the regional variations. So like
Mhm.
in the southern US, um, so like New Mexico and then Texas, it's pretty much the same thing. But people have reported sightings near lonely roads and dry creek beds, or in the desert. And there's a rumor that drivers will see a woman dressed in white walking along the road and will disappear when they stop to check on her. And that story is typically used to keep children from wandering around at night, as well as a way to keep them from disobeying their parents. And if you ask me, I know that each culture has some type of moral, some type of moral story to keep kids from like misbehaving and things like that. This one seems to be extremely dramatic and kind of extreme, if
To
you ask
terrify
me.
them into obedience. Like,
Yeah, not like that. I just
yeah,
couldn't, man. Not
it's
like that.
pretty extreme. I don't think I would like, for example, the correlation between the crying, like where we live, if I heard crying, it's probably coyotes, right? That's enough
Yeah.
to scare my children instead of saying some dead woman is kidnapping children at night just to make them obedient.
Yeah. Do you remember from the previous episode that we did where it was the Japanese version of sleep paralysis?
Yes.
What that was called?
You know what? I might have my. So I remember it meant
Kanashi
bound in,
Biri or something like that?
yeah, Kanashibaru, something like bound in chains. What sleep
Yes,
paralysis meant.
Kanashi
Kanashibaru.
Biri or
Yeah, I believe that was it.
um yep. Yeah, that's it.
Kanashibaru.
Kanashi Bari, yeah. Yeah, Kanashi Bari.
Yeah, bound by
Um
chains.
so I think it's either the Kanashi Bari, or it's the one from Thailand, the Bangugat,
Hmm.
where it's a warning that like if you eat too much too late,
Yeah. Yeah.
this thing will sit on your chest.
Hmm.
And to me, I'm just kind of thinking like, what is it with these cultures that are like trying to terrify people? Like, why are they trying to scare them
Yeah.
this badly?
What's interesting though, since this has been around for centuries,
Yeah.
that it's still there. People still talk about it to this day. I mean, I know we're going to get into it, but they made a film not too many years ago about this, so it's popular enough where, it's in cinema.
Was this the film that was made in 2019?
The Curse of La Llorona.
La Llorona. Yeah.
Llorona, yeah. That's it.
If it's the one that I'm thinking of, uh, yes, it is the one I'm thinking of. We'll
Yeah.
definitely go into that because
Yeah.
I have a lot of negative things to say about that movie.
Okay. Okay.
it's a I don't know if you knew this, but it's a Conjuring universe movie too.
Yeah, I listen to some people talk about that. I'm not part of the fan base of the Conjuring universe, but it's interesting how they're trying to make a whole
Universe out of it.
yeah, like Marvel type thing out of it. Like they're all gonna
Yeah.
fight Freddy Krueger's head or something. I don't know.
Like they're trying to bring like a bunch of Avengers that are like really exorcists or something.
Yeah, for the ultimate battle. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I used to be part of that group. I used to be like, "Oh yeah, I love Ed and Lorraine Warren," but like just
Hmm.
after just doing some simple reading, you know, and just looking back at just we can definitely get more into it later, but like I just read some things that really made me start to question them just because she Lorraine Warren Lorraine Warren professed to be a clairvoyant, and she was also a professing Christian. And so I'm just kind of thinking like it's interesting because I think they were also practicing Catholics. And so it's interesting just because, the more that if you actually look back at what scripture and what the catechism says about that stuff, it's very much against it.
Yes.
So I think there is a potential that they were frauds.
Yeah, I
Um,
believe that. Yeah.
yeah.
Claiming to be part
So
of being clairvoyant is like mysticism, but you can't mix that with Catholicism.
no,
Yeah.
no, you can't. And speaking of Catholicism, the more we go into this topic, you'll see how distorted people take. They will distort Catholicism very much in whenever it comes to certain traditions and cultural traditions and things like that.
Hmm.
Did you happen to see any other variations from other regions of South America in reference to the La Llorona story or
Yeah, just one was whether she was like crying or wailing for her own children or she would be crying for food. One of those. I think both would be to lure the victim in. And then in Hebrew mythology, uh La Llorona was inspired by Lilith, that we talked about on the phone the other day, because she was kind of the
yeah.
mother of abortions, or mother of she hates children. The same idea where she's, kidnapping or harming children, which is
That actually kind of
interesting.
makes me think of Moloch.
Yeah. Yeah. Same thing.
Um,
Same evil deeds.
yes. And just for a little description of Moloch or Moloch, I've heard it in a few different ways. Moloch is associated with a Canaanite religious practice, and that practice often involved child sacrifice,
Mhm.
particularly through fire. So it's actually very interesting because whenever you look at these things, it seems like children also tend to be the primary focus of
Yeah. They're the common victim and all these. Yeah. And then the
yeah.
Moloch, I believe it's the common illustration that you see. It's like a side illustration, but it's kind of a hybrid type creature. So it's a large idol, and it has kind of a dog head, and then it has its arm stretched out, and it's holding some kind of bowl, and then it shows people putting babies in it, and the bowl's on fire. It's really horrible.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Do you think that you could go a little more into Lilith, or do you think that could be something that we go into more at a later time?
I'll just touch on it a little bit. So Lilith
Hmm.
is in Hebrew mythology. Lilith was the first wife of Adam. So this is before Eve was created. And the idea was that Adam and Lilith, who Lilith was not made of Adam's flesh, she was made out of, more of the earth animal type, and they were not compatible. There's some kind of quote from a passage that says, she would not lay on her back. And so she and Adam were not compatible. And so God made Eve out of Adam's rib. and they were equal and compatible because they were of the same kind. And with Lilith, she cursed men. She was unable to bear children, and that's why she was nicknamed the mother of abortions, or she hates children. Kind of the same idea. Anything to disrupt that natural cycle of people procreating. And I know in popular culture, there is a new Sabrina the Teenage Witch show that came out several years ago. I believe it's still on Netflix. I'm not sure if they're still redoing new seasons, but she is one of the main characters of the show. And I think it does give a pretty good backstory of what she is. But she's not a human being, just for the record.
Mhm.
But that's who Lilith is.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Um,
Adam's quote unquote first wife.
okay. So while you were talking about that, I went ahead and just wanted to get like a quick little thing from ChatGPT. And it says that in the Hebrew text of Isaiah 34:14, which I will go ahead and also do a quick Google of that verse really quick as well. The wild beasts of the desert shall also meet with the wild beasts of the island, and the satyr shall cry to his fellow, the screech owl also shall rest there and find for herself a place of rest. That was the King James version, the NIV. Desert creatures will meet with hyenas, and wild goats will bleat to each other. There, the night creatures will also lie down and find for themselves places of rest. There's the word, there's a word Lilith, which literally means night creature or night demon.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as we read King James, that said screech owl, which is just a different translation. And then the NIV and the ESV will say night creature. And then I guess the Jewish Publication Society Lilith is the direct transliteration, and so I think that's where people get um the term Lilith from.
Mm-hmm.
And she is described as a winged female demon of the night. So it kind of makes me think like maybe that's where they
Yeah.
got the succubus from.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. I will say this now. Don't attack me. This is just. I always thought this was interesting. Um, if we want to, correlation doesn't equal causation, but in Genesis 3,
Mm-hmm.
it's talking about the fall when God cursed Adam and Eve. So, and read some scripture here. Um, so he said, so the Lord God said to the serpent, because you have done this, cursed are you above all livestock and all wild animals. You will crawl on your belly and you will eat dust all the days of your life. And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will crush your head and you will strike his heel. And then it goes into he said to the woman, and then what he says to Adam. And so the verse that says, when he cursed the serpent, so cursed are you above all livestock and all wild animals. You will crawl on your belly. You will eat dust all the days of your life. And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will crush your head and you will strike his heel. I always thought, what does that mean? You know, your offspring and hers, even though it's the translation here is serpent. I always thought that was, I haven't found a great explanation for that.
Um, what verse was this? Was this just
This was
Genesis chapter?
Genesis 3.
Okay.
Yeah. So I always thought that's interesting. I'm not saying that has anything to do with Lilith, but I mean, the offsprings always being at odds with each other. I thought, well, what is the offspring of the serpent? If it's an animal, why would it matter? But it's just my brain. Forgive me.
I actually think that this is talking about Mary and Satan. He will put enmity between Satan and Mary. And
Satan and Mary,
yes,
Mary the
because
mother of
Mary
Jesus,
do what?
Mary the mother of
Mother of
Jesus.
Jesus, yes.
Why do you think that?
Well, I knew that this sounded pretty familiar uh to begin with, but there is theological teachings that I've heard where they tie in between uh the woman that's mentioned here, and then whenever Jesus is talking to Mary during the wedding at Cana, and he's saying, "Woman, my time is not yet here." Whenever she tells him to essentially, whenever she tells him that like the wine has run out and all they have left is those tubs of water, and he ends up
Hmm.
turning the water into wine, and he says, "Woman, my time is not now." The uh the correlation between that and Genesis 3 is that he's referring to this woman from Genesis 3 verse 15, and between Mary whenever he calls her that. And so um and Mary is also known as the Holy Mother, obviously not taking anything away from Christ. Obviously Christ is the uh he's Christ is king, and God is the Father, but um you know in reference to Jesus being the king, the mother was usually the queen, not the wife.
Hmm.
And so they're putting, or they're showing you more of a, I would say, a poetic way of describing the enmity between Mary and the devil, because Mary will ultimately end up carrying Jesus, and she will be the one that crushes the head of the serpent. And then I think they even
Oh
reiterate
yeah.
this. Yeah, they'll even reiterate that in Revelation, I believe.
Hmm. Yeah, because I'm looking up the definition of enmity. It means the state or feeling of being actively opposed or hostile to someone or something. Yeah, so that would make sense.
But very, very interesting stuff. I would actually really like to learn more about Lilith and
Hmm.
where people kind of get that idea from, because like even though from what I've seen it seems as though Lilith is more of a seems like more of a Jewish word that is meant to describe something
Hmm.
rather than an actual character. It seems like she did become a full on like folklore-ish character,
Hmm.
but it's very interesting.
Oh yeah.
And so maybe La Llorona in a way is connected to her in some way, shape, or form,
Hmm.
or she was taken. So very interesting. Is
Yeah.
that and is that all that you had from about Lilith so far?
Yeah, that's all I had. Yep.
Okay. I did see that there is also a Guatemalan tradition, and I guess it's one of the darker versions of the legend where it centers on a woman in Guatemala City who took a lover while she was married, and when she became pregnant and gave birth to a son named Juan de la Cruz, she drowned the child to keep her husband from discovering the affair. And as punishment, she was condemned after death to wander endlessly near bodies of water, crying out for her lost child.
Mm.
The cry of "Ay mis hijos," oh my children, is so deeply tied to the legend that generations of Guatemalan children grow up recognizing it. And in a unique twist, in this version, is the belief that the distance of her crying is actually deceiving. So if you hear the crying faintly, she's actually really
Closer.
close.
Yeah.
and and
Yeah,
if
I
it's
heard that.
nearby, yeah, you did hear that one?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So if
creepy.
it's nearby, she's far away.
Yeah.
And
Oh.
those unfortunate enough to encounter her are said to be dragged into the afterlife and never to return. So this particular telling has deep roots in Antigua, Guatemala, which was once the capital of the Kingdom of Guatemala and remains part of the region's cultural folklore. So Very interesting. That one is pretty dark and probably the more terrifying one because usually in all the other ones, it's just like if she's nearby, you get hit with like some sort of bad luck or you're cursed.
Hmm. Well, she's got a lot of free time in her hands to do that to people.
She has too much free time.
Get a life,
Yeah.
Maria.
And you know what? In the movie, the name of the girl was Marisol. Did you see that? You remember that?
The Curse of
Yeah, the
Llorona?
curse of La Llorona.
No, I did not. I watched a lot of snippets and reviews. I didn't want to disturb my peace too much, but I mean, people said it was okay. What did you think of the film?
I
So
thought it was
we're moving
dumb.
on to pop culture. Did you like it?
I thought it was so stupid, man.
Yeah.
Um,
The review
it's
said it was you could guess every what do they call that? Like a pop-up scary moment.
yes.
Very predictable.
I'll put it to you like this: if you watched the trailer, all of the scary parts of the
Yeah.
movie were in the trailer.
Make
Nothing new there.
it was a I thought I heard it was a really low budget film, so it only costed probably less than $10 million to make, but they
Hmm.
spent $40 million for advertising.
Yeah.
But it was all, like we mentioned earlier, part of the Conjuring franchise.
Yeah, and I'm actually very disappointed because the first Conjuring movie was really well done. And obviously the producers know that it was really well done. And so clearly they use that as their selling point of in the Conjuring universe. And then, they show you La Llorona and then the kid in the car and the windows
Mhm.
are rolling up by themselves and unlocking, the doors are unlocking and everything.
Oh,
That was actually really creepy. It really was. And I think one thing where Hollywood messes up with horror movies is the scary entity or the ghost, whatever, the spirit, the monster, the movie's monster, right? When the movie monster becomes the main character or one of the main characters, it stops being scary. Whenever you keep that character like Jaws, the big reveal is in the end,
mhm.
but throughout the movie, Jaws is around. Like it's almost like you're anticipating Jaws to pop out somewhere.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, that's what true horror is. And you know, that something is truly scary whenever it affects everything else in your life. Like for instance, with Jaws, people were even afraid of getting into swimming pools.
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah. No kidding.
especially me. I know I was, and so whenever a movie sits with you like that, that's how you know it's a good horror movie. But with La Llorona, I remember after the first Conjuring movie, me and my brothers were freaking terrified, and we did not. I mean, we had trouble sleeping. But with La Llorona, that didn't happen. I was just like, that movie was just so stupid.
You're
Yeah,
like, stop your crying. I don't want to hear it.
yeah,
Yeah, dude.
yeah.
I was gonna say, so it's the same common theme of her looks, the disgusting, comparison to the Grudge and the Ring.
Hmm.
Um, do you remember a film? It was in 2012 called The Woman in Black,
Yes,
and I believe it was kind of a big deal because it was what's his name?
Daniel Radcliffe.
Yeah, Daniel Radcliffe's first big movie or movie after Harry Potter. And so, anyways, it was a pretty kind of the same thing. It was, from what I remember, it was a huge mansion. A wealthy person or wealthy people lived there, and it was abandoned. So basically, I think they said he's an attorney of some kind, like a real estate attorney, and he has to go basically get all the papers together to get the home ready to sell. And he has to go there, and of course, he's got his faithful companion, his dog with him. And the way the house is, the tide will come up every day at a certain time, so you can only come and go at certain times. And so The building, or excuse me, the home is haunted by the woman in black. And that was a pretty startling movie. But your comment about the villain or the monster not being the main character, he was the main character, and she would pop out at different times, and oof, it was pretty intense. But I will say I saw the film in the movie theater and I was just about in tears. It was pretty scary. But the book, I read the book years ago, and it was written in 1983 by Susan Hill. And oh my goodness, dude, it was so much worse than the film. Like
Really?
the imagery it put, it was just, it was bad. And I'm not talking just like, blood and guts gory or anything. Just gave you chills. Like I had to take breaks from listening
Yeah.
to it. It was pretty bad.
Well, there you go. That's how you know you're reading a good book.
when
You
you're
know,
when you're scared straight, yeah.
yes. One other thing that I thought was interesting is that I was reading about the Ecuadorian version of, or Ecuador's interpretation of La Llorona,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess she's remembered as either La Llorona de los Ríos, right,
Right.
which is the crying woman of the rivers, or La Llorona de los Andes, which is the crying woman of the Andes. And it really just depends on where the story is told. But in this tradition, she loses her lover and is overwhelmed with despair, so she drowns her children in a nearby river. And condemned by her actions, she wanders the waterways, wailing in grief as she searches endlessly for her children. So even though there's like tiny little, I mean, there's definitely like tiny little like differences that go into it, but I mean,
Essentially the same story.
it is essentially the same story. Yeah.
And where is law enforcement at? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
No kidding.
I,
Um,
I do see in your notes you had a hitchhiker story.
so there was a local paranormal group that had posted about these La Llorona sightings, and then they became overwhelmingly popular. There was one female named Ediana Villalobos, where she described that she saw a woman in a long white dress with loose dark hair walking calmly but looking sad. Ariana said it felt horrible and they didn't want to get out of their cars, and the woman made no sound as they passed. Another witness named Martin only realized later that his dash cam had recorded something, and he didn't see anything while driving at 2 a.m. But when he checked the footage at home, the camera showed a glowing white figure standing in the front of his car. One local investigator by the name of Edgar Vega thinks that this could be La Llorona, and he points out that the sightings cluster near the river, and after weeks of rain, which he says fits the legend. He also notes something odd that several witnesses say the figure is silent, not crying the usual mis hijos that people expect, but there's people in that area that report other strange phenomena as well. Like one man told his family about the deaths during the 1900s flu pandemic. So that would have been like the 1920s, and says that he has seen pale childlike faces near his old farm where kin were buried. And then city officials say that they haven't received any police reports, and with no solid evidence, locals want a real investigation. And Vega said that he tried searching at night but hasn't found any conclusive proof yet, and hopes to assemble a team with better equipment to look more into it. So there's been like a sighting or two, it seems like a few of them, but it's just for that one, it just doesn't seem like there's enough for people, or at least for officials to really care, which is
Yeah,
kind of
it's
funny.
yeah, it's all kind of the same. I found a video. The guy's channel name was Groovy Gavin, and it was called. His video was titled "Is La Llorona Actually Real?" And he went to Mexico and he did some interviews with people, with locals, and they all just kind of had the same story, oh, my uncle, like you said, oh, my uncle saw them, or,
Hmm.
like weeping and all that kind of stuff. But essentially all the same thing. And he went out there. Apparently, she has a tombstone somewhere.
Really?
Yeah. Where supposedly she was buried. But whether that's actually her or someone else, I don't know. I believe there's a descendant that lives on the property where that is, but I don't know, nonetheless. And I did want to mention a song that was about Llorona, and it's pretty long, but I thought this was funny. One of the lines, the snippets, it says, "Everyone calls me the Black Llorona, black but loving. Everyone calls me the Black Llorona, black but loving. I am like the green chili pepper Llorona, spicy but tasty. I am like the green chili pepper Llorona, spicy but tasty."
How long ago did that song come out?
Let's see here.
Sounds
Um,
like the 80s, probably.
1941.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, she's
I'm
spicy.
something hot and spicy.
Yeah, careful. She's hot and spicy.
Spicier. Uh, you should watch you should watch the episode of South Park whenever they're giving crap to Jennifer Lopez and it's Cartman talking with his hand. That's what that made me think of. Um, yes, I actually did hear that there were quite a few songs that were about her. Um, and figured I would also go ahead and share another account. So there's a Guatemalan village. There's a small Guatemalan village. I'm not seeing a name. I think it's vague like that on purpose because I think that this might be just a campfire story.
Mhm.
But there were these parents that woke up to the sound of their children crying in terror, and their children swore they heard a woman sobbing right outside their bedroom window. And when the parents rushed to look, the street outside was empty. The night was still, there wasn't anybody outside. But in the mud beneath the window, they found clear imprints of wet, barefoot tracks. And the strange part was that the nearest river was miles away. And so by morning, the prints had dried and faded, but the children continued to keep a consistent story about what they experienced that night. And they would say that they never forgot the sound of the wailing.
Mm.
And so a lot of people tie that story into La Llorona, believing that it was her wandering and searching for her kids.
You said that was in Guatemala?
Yes.
Yeah. I'll share a story quickly. It's not after this urban legend, but it was on one of our favorite podcasts, Monsters Among Us, and I believe
Mm,
it was the wife that called in, but she shared a story that she and her husband and her two sons experienced. So she described they lived in a town and she and her husband were asleep and her two sons were they had their own bedroom downstairs. And so she heard a one of her sons like crying and crying for help outside. And this was the middle of the night. So she hears it and she wakes up her husband and says, I think such and such is outside. Can you go get him? And he says, yeah, I'll go get him. And so he goes out and opens a back door and he says, where are you? And he said, the way she described it, there was the backyard, then there was like a shed, and then there was kind of like a field area. And so he turned on the spotlight and he's like, where are you? She's like, I'm over here. And he's like, well, come here. What are you doing outside? And he's like, come here. And then he realized that doesn't sound like his son. And he says, where are you? She's like, come here. I'm scared. And he said, well, you need to come out. And he started to become suspicious. And then he said his wife came to the door and she said, both of the boys are asleep in their beds. And yeah, he just,
Ew.
and he said he saw this like blackish object go from like behind a tree behind the shed. And what I liked about the story, like most of these stories, you have to take with a grain of salt. But what I liked about it was they did the right thing. They called 911 and said, this is explained what happened. And so they said they had officers out there and they searched the area, but they couldn't find anything. They didn't know how to explain it, but it was reported. But I mean, I don't know what to think about that. So pretty
Yeah,
scary.
there's stories that I've heard where they're referred to as mimics,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's really weird. Like they're apparently like these ghost. I don't know if they're like spirits or physical creatures, but like I think there was like one TV show on Netflix that I watched where like I think it might have been a spirit or something. And I guess mimics are supposed to be able to make you think that a family member or your friend is like nearby or something like that. And I mean, oh, you know what? There was actually a trend going on TikTok for a while where it was people like in their bedrooms filming their, they're filming from inside their bedrooms, but they're pointing the camera at the door and you can
Oh,
hear them going like, it's mommy, like it is creepy, but like, I think they're fake. I mean, they're
yes.
definitely fake, but like they do a good job of, you know, producing this stuff, but like it was a mimic is what they were doing.
Or a mockingbird.
But yeah, a mockingbird. But it does kind of make me wonder, like, yeah, you don't really hear any more about any other stuff that La Llorona does. It's just her crying, wandering around, and it's actually interesting because I know that every culture has like a slightly different interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is that I was doing a little bit of research. I think I was reading an article from what is it called? History Today. Yeah. I was reading an article from History Today, and during Dia de los Muertos, which is during November 1st and November 2nd, I think that that's where All Saints Day is, which All Saints Day is a legitimate like Catholic holiday where people gather together and they pray for saints, but Dia de los Muertos is not associated with the Catholic Church at all. In fact, the Catholic Church would condemn it, if
Mm-hmm.
anything. Um, but um, but during Dia de los Muertos, La Llorona is sometimes included in those celebrations as a wandering spirit that returns. Um, because during Dia de los Muertos, I don't know how much you know, but for anybody listening that doesn't know, is that's Dia de los Muertos is where they celebrate like deceased friends and family to kind of have like this weird,
Well,
family reunion.
the day of the dead.
Right.
Yeah.
And they build altars, they have like music playing, they'll like dress up like and they'll do makeup like skeletons and they'll look
Mm-hmm.
like skeletons and stuff. Um and there are several, I mean, it's very popular in Mexico. I've heard that it's basically like Mexican Halloween.
Yeah,
um
yeah. It's a good way
because
to
that's
describe it.
around the time that they do it, right? But with La Llorona, she becomes like this symbolic figure of sorrow and loss. And in some communities, she represents the pain of separation between the living and the dead. I have a huge issue with it. And I know that I'm probably going to insult a lot of people that, probably actually celebrate it. But, um, it's, I want to point out that it's a heavily poor imitation of All Saints Day. And I actually think that that holiday or so-called holiday actually treads into heresy because we're talking about a culture of people which by the way, Catholicism is very, a lot of people in Mexico or a lot of people in South America are usually professing Catholics.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have a culture of people professing to be Catholic, adding a spiritual being like La Llorona, who murdered her kids. She was never canonized as a saint, never
Mm-hmm.
repented for her sins. And usually she's this spirit that symbolizes terror and harm and bad luck and misfortune. And then, if anybody participates in this event, I am heavily, heavily recommending that they stop, especially if they're professing Catholics, because the Catholic Church does not endorse the holiday, nor would it support anybody interacting with the dead. And like earlier, I was telling you that I was reading, that I was doing some reading, and I did look up some scripture, and I did look up I did refer back to the Catechism of the Catholic Church, and in the Catechism in 1022, it says each man receives his eternal retribution in his immortal soul at the very moment of his death, in a particular judgment that refers his life to Christ, either entrance into the blessedness of heaven, um, through a purification, which they would that purification process would be called purgatory. Which I want to clarify: purgatory is not a place; it is a process. It is a purification process, or immediate and everlasting damnation. So it's either you're going into heaven, going through the purification process, or you are going to hell. Your spirit doesn't wander. And so this would contradict that idea of souls wandering back for that reunion. And then in the Catechism 2111, it talks about how it actually says superstition is the deviation of religious feeling, attributing an importance in some way magical to certain practices otherwise lawful or necessary. Um, those altars that people build to welcome spirits falls under superstition. And then if you go to Hebrews 9:27, it's in the English Standard Version, it says it is appointed for man to die once, and after that comes
Mm-hmm.
judgment. In Deuteronomy 18:10 through 12, there shall not be found among you anyone who inquires of the dead, for whoever does these things is an abomination to the Lord. So practices like calling on or welcoming spirits back are explicitly condemned.
Mm-hmm.
In
I think
the catechism,
the
sorry, what's
witch,
that?
I think believe it's the Solomon, like the Witch of Endor.
Yes,
Yeah,
it was King Saul.
King Saul. Yes.
Yes. And it was the prophet Stephen, I believe, that he woke up. I think it was Stephen.
Um, I'll have to look that up. Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Um, in 21 in the Catechism 2126, it says all forms of divination are to be rejected. Recourse to Satan or demons, conjuring up the dead, or other practices falsely supposed to unveil the future, all conceal a desire for power over time, history, and other human beings, a wish to conciliate hidden powers. Practices tied to Dia de los Muertos, like welcoming spirits back, treating them as they are here in the present, would fall into this category. Um, John 11 verses 25 through 26 says, I'm the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live, and everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. Um, Christ is life, and he is the focus, not the dead. We shouldn't be so hyper focused on death. Um, so the Bible is very clear that life and death have no fellowship with each other. and light has nothing in communion with darkness, which is Second Corinthians 6:14. And yet that holiday blurs that line. It's suggesting that the dead returns to walk among the living. Um, the Catechism 2117 also states that recourse to so called traditional cures does not justify either the invocation of evil spirits or the exploitation of another credulity. So, in other words, culture and tradition is not an excuse to practice superstition or to invoke spirits or anything contrary to faith in God. So even if the intention seems harmless, like honoring your family or using what the catechism refers to as a traditional cure, it does not excuse invoking powers outside of God.
Because it's essentially witchcraft, which God finds detestable.
Absolutely. People also try to put these parameters on like what's okay and what isn't. Like, oh, Santeria is okay.
Yeah.
And it's like no, it doesn't matter if it's black, it doesn't matter if it's Santeria, brujeria, which brujeria is just it just means witchcraft. It's not none of it's good. It doesn't matter if you're what's referred to as a good witch or a bad witch. It
Right.
it
It's
doesn't matter.
which it's yeah. It's like in the Sabrina show, side note, they kind of do
Hmm.
that thing like, dark magic and light magic, whatever they refer to, but it's all bad.
Yes.
And I always joke with my family, it's you see a lot of it in big churches or like new age Christianity where I say it's a la carte Jesus. They pick what they want out of Jesus,
Yeah,
and then they're like, "Well, I don't like this, or I'll put this in," and and it's not like that.
that is such a good way of putting it. A la carte
That's I always
Jesus.
say, a la carte Jesus. And I did
Yeah.
look it up. So he was summoning. Saul was summoned the spirit of Samuel.
Samuel, thank you.
Yeah,
Not
Samuel. So
Stephen.
yeah, so
Yeah. So earlier I had said that people build altars.
hmm
Those are called ofrendas. So they will build ofrendas to welcome spirits. Um, and this would all, I mean, this would definitely fall under superstition.
oh
And
yeah,
people would get mad at me and they'd yell at me and say like, "Hey, this is my family that, we're talking about, we go and we put flowers on their tombstones and we blah blah blah." And it's like, you know, if you want to go and put flowers on your family's tombstone and whatnot, that's fine. Go do
sure,
that and pray for them, but don't invite the dead back to, don't invite the dead to you because you're really opening doors that you have no idea what's, hanging around on the other side. Um, and not only that, but, in talking about tradition and culture, Colossians 2:8 says, "See to it that no one takes you captive by philosophy and empty deceit, according to human tradition, according to the elemental spirits of the world, and not according to Christ." So, not all cultural traditions are neutral, and some will even lead you away from Christ. So,
yeah, yeah,
these things, I get it. I understand, especially like whenever you've been practicing a certain tradition for a long time. I mean, this kind of just goes back to when the disciples started addressing the Gentiles. The Gentiles in the New Testament, I mean, they had been practicing and worshiping false gods. So
yeah,
whenever they had to, so then whenever they started actually preaching the gospel, they had to break away from those traditions.
yeah, yeah.
And
You're
I,
right.
I would say it's the same kind of idea,
Yeah, the golden calf. Yeah,
right? So I know that this conversation is around La Llorona, but I think I got irritated seeing that a woman that is rarely, if not ever, celebrated. She's an icon of horror. She is a spiritual being that resembles, like I said earlier, terror and misfortune. So it's like, why are they imitating All Saints Day with that kind of figure there? It just it wouldn't make any sense to me.
No, it's oxymoronic.
Heavily.
Yeah.
And there's people that and there's people that think that what they're doing over there is what the Catholic Church condones, and they don't. The Catholic Church absolutely does not condone that stuff. In fact, the Catholic Church is so strict whenever it comes to any kind of witchcraft, superstition, dark magic, all that stuff. I mean, um, they won't even let you in the Catholic Church if you're a practicing Freemason. They won't let you.
Yeah, there's a lot of uh disagreement with, say, Christianity and Masonry,
Mhm.
Freemasonry. Like, well, you can be a Mason, and it's the whole dangle the carrot game. The higher the rank you go, the more secrets you're told. I mean, that's not contradictory to scripture, this secret society stuff. And then, who are you gonna, who's your God really? You can't do both.
No, no. And I think that could actually be a topic for another time, actually,
Oh
because
yes.
I could totally, I think we could both absolutely
I know.
go into that.
Because we
Um,
we investigated that a couple of years ago, if you remember.
yeah, and well, you know what? I actually did a lot more homework too
Yeah, dude.
on it, and it's very, very interesting. So, yeah, we'll definitely have to do more investigation on Freemasonry.
Yeah.
But yeah, just going back to La Llorona, like I just kind of think like I don't know, just whenever I read that they included her on that holiday, whenever whenever the author of that article started bringing up Catholic tradition, I'm just like, that is not it's not Catholic tradition. They do not do that at all.
Mm.
So um in uh in pop culture, aside from all that, in pop culture, they have actually made quite a few movies about La Llorona, and I believe they all have sucked.
The common denominators, they suck.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't watch the newer one, but it just the reviews and what you said. I mean, I'm not gonna. And I'll be honest, I'm sensitive to imagery, and
Mhm.
when I saw the trailer of that ugly hag, I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
you know,
So I'm actually on IMDb right now, and they have 22 films about La Llorona. And
goodness.
I did not realize this, but the oldest one listed on here that they made was made in 1933.
Whoa, hang
Yes.
on, I'm gonna look that up. What does it say? The title of the film?
It's just La Llorona. And it was directed by Ramon Peon. And it
I can't.
says in
Mm,
modern Mexico, a malevolent spirit targets a family, linking tragic past events of abandoned infanticide. And I'm sorry, infanticidal mothers to a possessed intruder's attempt to sacrifice their son. Okay, well, that actually sounds like a pretty decent movie, even though it was like 1933. I think from what I remember, I just remember there being like maybe three different movies that came out within the last few years, like within the last 5 years. I know that there's been a few movies that came out, and they were all. I mean, they all look dumb.
mhm.
and then I wasted movie, and then I wasted money in the at the movies watching the Curse of La Llorona. I mean, it was a fun watch with my dad because me and him were sitting there laughing at how stupid it was. But and then you said that you found was that the only song that you found, the one that was in the 40s?
Yeah, it was pretty long too. Yeah.
I also kind of remember, I don't know if it was La Llorona, if it was something else, but like whenever you looked in the mirror, no,
Um,
that's Bloody Mary.
yeah, I remember it's some childhood thing. You look in the mirror and you say, Mary, I don't know, so many times.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's also some kind of apparently it's nationwide or maybe worldwide, but like you go to your nearest like creek or bridge and you turn off your car because at some point there was a school bus that went off there and everybody drowned. And so when you turn off your car and you try to start it, it won't start. And then you start to see handprints on the car. Yeah, I just remember a lot of that. But it's like a common scary story for kids.
Yeah, that would definitely fall into superstition.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be any part of that, man.
Oh, don't worry. We tried it. It didn't work.
Thanks for trying it for me.
Yeah. We actually had a buddy that was a cop at the time who was like, what was it? And he looked it up. He's like, I couldn't find anything on it. I was like, because it didn't happen.
Well, this has been another episode of I Can't Move. We thank you so much for listening. If you have a story, a creepy story that you would like to share, please submit it and just send it to our email at I can't move podcast at yahoo.com. You can leave your name or you can also make yourself anonymous. So we thank you so much for joining with us, and we will see you on the next one.
Peace.
Peace.